Now, one of the most important things that is to transplant from a plant material that resides in a real deep pot like this. And this happened to be a ficus burtt-dayvi, longleaf, which is been growing for a number of years. And this was obviously specifically grown for bonsai, as you can see. And this is what I grow currently for my classes that I conduct here. And so this is specifically grown for bonsai. Therefore, it's not in a real deep pot like a gallon can pot, but it is grown in a 6-inch pot. This was done in a very hard place to transplant or hard place to grow plant material, and yet you want to successfully transfer this plant material into a shallower container. I take it out of the container, as know that you have to do this obviously, and then when you look at this, the most unfriendly place for the roots to grow is on the surface here, and that's the reason why in most cases it's the root does not go in, grow upward. It grows into this moist, friendly area, but this is where it gets dry the quickest, right here, and so this is where I would start to reduce the root mass as best as you can, and in many cases what you do is you're just gonna go with your fingers, and or if it's really tough to do, you take some, like a chopstick, and then you just go down this way. And this is a kind of a safety measure to make sure that your root is starting to get exposed, for reasons that if the plant was, let's say the plant was was down here and you had lots of soil up here, and then you decided that you're going to cut off only 3 inches from the top, what's going to happen is that sometimes you might cut right over here and leave the roots down in the bottom, and the plant is going to actually die, obviously. And so it is very important to, not only for aesthetic purposes, but for the general welfare of this plant, is to be able to see the radiating roots like this. This one happened to be a little high than the rest, so if it's a one isolated one, I still keep on going down a little bit more to expose other ones that might not be fully exposed. But this is for aesthetic purposes. When you start seeing the flare, as you see on this side here, you see the roots here, and that's what you want to do. And then what you do is that you go down in here and say, okay, you go into the pot like this, and you want slight elevation. This is elevated too much. And so what I do is that I take it up, and now instead of dismantling the whole thing to traumatize the plant material, what I do is that I massage the root mass at the bottom here and let it drop this way. And you reduce this, the size of it. And you note that I do not disturb the rest of it, is because I want the plant to think that the only part that was reduced was the soil up top, and then there might be some stress at this point, but the growing mass, or the life-giving part of the root mass, is not disturbed. So this, in effect, is not really doing a whole lot. And if there happen to be a tap root, then you can cut this at this point. But the growing strength of this plant material, or the ability for the plant to get moisture so that it can photosynthesize up here, is not really disturbed at this moment. Okay, and then you put it back down in here like this, and examine to see whether if it's slightly elevated, and I think this is okay now. And then what I usually do is that I put the number one branch, or the most prominent branch, I don't know if we can see this or not, but the number one branch on the short wire side. And this is the short wire side. You note that my wire, tie down wire, is one side short, one side long. And so now, maybe this would be a better view here. Now, you do this and you settle this down, and then you move the root ball towards the long wire side so that it would not stay directly in the center of the pot. So it stays, just off center pot. and then you settle it down, and then you see you have the option here where, if you're really conservative, you don't cut any of the roots at all. And you note that I did not remove any of the roots here. And maybe I'm cheating a little bit because it's in a shallower container, and and it was specifically, grown for bonsai. Therefore, I'm not putting in a extraordinary deep pot, so the customers and or the practitioners would not have, would have an easier time transplanting. As you note here, I put the long wire over the top of the root ball, and then you note that I have a longer wire here than the short wire here, and then you grasp that, and then you pull it as hard as you can to take all the slack out of it, and then you look for the short wire side, and then you twist it. And you want to make sure that the root ball is securely tied into the container. So you have to be very serious about doing this. And the reason for this is that you don't want the tree to pop out on a windy day, and so this is the reason why we tie this in the container. And then you go and take some, and I prefer the dry soil, because when you start to pack this down, you don't want anything muddy. And for those of you that think, well, the plant material actually came not looking so granular, and therefore you have to take you have to take some of the the clay-like soil off of it and stuff. At this moment, if you did that, the plant is going to suffer. And the time to do that would be after you've had it for a number of years, or maybe a year or two, and the plant is doing okay and thriving. Then you can remove the non-granular soil in stages instead of doing it all one time. Because what's going to happen in many cases, is that you're going to really, like the tree. It's going to be a pet tree, and uh, you you don't want to lose it just because maybe some of the books that tells you that you can you can take and comb all the roots out. The time that you know first put the tree in a bonsai container, and then you tap it down with your thumb and get it down like this. And then you have a number of options. If you want to have some greenery and put some moss, this is a time that you can put the moss on. Or what you can do is then you can put some granular material on it to make it look nice. And this is what I'm going to do, is to take a clean gravel, or clean, in this particular case, it's clay matter. Then you put it on liberally. And there you are. Mission accomplished.